Mental health affects a lot of people. According to Charity Mind, 1 in 4 people in the UK alone will experience a mental health issue every year.
Now, when I say sad game, I don't mean a game that's inherently sad or downbeat. In fact, I don't mean sad game at all. I mean sad game, which is how I've come to refer internally to the game I seek out and play when I'm feeling down.
I planned to make something like Low Batteries for quite a long time. I had actually made one video before on Eurogamer, which was just a list of videos that did mental health right, and that was kind of inspired by playing Life is Strange. But I actually ended up making the first episode of Low Batteries because I was really down. I was having like a terrible week. I was having an awful day, and it was one of those days where I felt like my depression was all encompassing, and it just I couldn't get away from it. And it was about 3 p.m. and I had to get a video up that day, and I knew I needed to, and I went for a shower, and I was just kind of standing there thinking, like, what am I going to do? There's nothing. Any ideas coming into my head seemed trite because I was just so down that I thought, I don't want to do that and do that. And then I kind of just had one of those like sod it moments where it's like, if I'm feeling this bad, I may as well just throw myself at it and talk about it. So I came up with the title of the show in the shower. I didn't tell anyone that was what I was making or that I was planning a series or anything. I just made the first episode, and it just kind of, the script fell out of me in about an hour, and I edited it together, and it helped. Like it was cathartic for me to talk about it, and the response was genuinely really great. There were, my job is to make videos on YouTube, and no matter what you put up and no matter how much of yourself you put into it, you're gonna get some people leaving nasty comments or telling you that the work is pointless or worthless or whatever. But with this, it was pretty much all positive. People saying this is a nice thing, I'm glad you're doing this, because I think people don't talk to gamers about mental health with reference to their that hobby very often. So I feel like a lot of the people who respond really positively to Low Batteries, they're doing it because it's a surprise to find that kind of stuff and have someone addressing these issues. And I think one thing I've learned about it is how many people so strongly identify as like gamers with video games as a lifestyle and a life choice. It's not something I think many other hobbies do so strongly for people. So when somebody is coming at them with issues or with topics they may not have considered and may need to hear, when it's done in reference to something that forms such a fundamental part of who they consider themselves to be, I think it can be really helpful. So it's been nice to see that it has resonated with so many people. A lot of the feedback I got was talking about people, some people saying that it was nice to hear somebody talk about, say, anxiety, which they suffer from, and it made them feel less alone. Some people have said that it's helped them realise something about themselves that they didn't see before. Like they've noticed and identified a lot of similar things in their own behaviours and their own thought patterns, which is really nice. But I've also been challenged along the way by some people saying that perhaps I didn't cover a topic quite in depth enough, or that the focus of the show initially was too narrow. A lot of it I was drawing on my own experiences with depression and anxiety, but talking about other things that I had no reference for. There's only so much I could do, I think, early on. I'm not a medical professional. My dad's a doctor, my mum's a nurse, so I really want to make sure I get this stuff right. But at the end of the day, a lot of the time I am just a person with no medical training, with a copy of DSM-5, which in and of itself can be controversial, just trying to make sure I don't do anyone a disservice. So I definitely learned how little I knew about other mental health disorders, and So it's been kind of illuminating to try and delve into what other people go through. It's been a really good exercise in empathy, and yeah, it's kind of made me realise how many challenges people face when they're confronted with media, like video games. It may not be completely obvious what's going to be included in a game or how it's going to be done, whether it's going to be sensitive or not. For example, I did an episode on the portrayal of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had a look at Spec Ops: The Line, which for the most part does a pretty good job, but at least in my opinion at the end it completely goes off the rails, and I found myself thinking that must be like horrible for somebody suffering from PTSD to go through this game that for 9/10 of it seems pretty alright, and then falls into the trap of, if it's PTSD, half of you is dangerous, and it's akin to like a really reductive portrayal of schizophrenia you see so commonly in TV and cinema. And it made me think that must be absolutely crushing to not have that support the whole way through, because what if somebody had played that game and then it completely invalidated their whole experience. A lot of my own personal sort of hang-ups are to do with being a worthwhile person, and I'm often very, very hard on myself, and I'm a lot of the time my anxiety is telling me that I'm good for nothing and nothing I do is of worth, etc., etc. So to be able to talk about things that were related to the stuff that makes me feel bad about myself, and have people respond and say that it helped them, that was incredibly rewarding. Some of the feedback's been like really lovely. Somebody sent me a message saying that a mobile game called Flowy I talked about, which is designed to help people deal with panic attacks, had helped them calm down enough to call the Samaritans and get home after a difficult night out. And just that was like, it made the whole thing feel worthwhile, I have suffered sort of sporadically with depression since I was about probably 15, but I wasn't diagnosed until 2012. I just stopped functioning basically, and then my dad stepped in and said, I think you need to go to your GP. So I went, and I was put on some SSRIs, and I took those for about 2 years. It wasn't until my GP talked me into going to CBT. I was very resistant to the idea of talking therapy for quite a long time, because I felt like I didn't want to delve into the causes of what was making me feel bad. I wanted to learn how to feel better, and I didn't realise that was what CBT could offer me. It wasn't until I did CBT that I realised how heavily I suffer from anxiety as well. I've always considered myself to be a very laid-back person, but I don't think I made the connection between being laid back and also, suffering really heavily from anxiety not necessarily being the same thing. That was a weird revelation for me. So the CBT really helped. I learned a lot about calming myself down, and really it just taught me how to be more aware of my own mental state, and sort of just kind of cut things off at the pass. So since then, I've been off antidepressants for a couple of years now, and all in all, my mental health is pretty good. Like I still have to keep an eye on my anxiety. I now just have periods where completely unexpectedly I'll be super depressed for like a short period of time, like 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, and that's weird and that's scary actually. Like in some ways I kind of, when I'm feeling depressed like that, I find myself wishing that I could go back to the sort of background hum level of being moderately depressed all the time, rather than this sudden like supernova dip where I collapse into myself. Yeah, and then not knowing when it's coming, it's like being in a ship and in a sea full of like mines, not knowing when you're going to hit one and how long it's going to last, because there's always the fear, right, that this episode is going to be another 2-year fight to get back up. But the thing I keep reminding myself is that I guess being depressed again doesn't mean that you've undone all of the work you've done to get to where you are. You know, you're not sliding back. You're just, you know, I don't know. Having a relapse isn't a sign that you're going backwards. Is what I try and tell myself anyway. Because as long as I've been aware of the fact I, you know, struggle with mental health, I've used video games as a coping mechanism. You know, there are games I play specifically when I'm feeling anxious or I need to distract myself. And it's kind of, I use it as sort of like a healthy and easy, like, bit of escapism when I really, really need it. You know, there are times when the balance has shifted, like, and it's become just a straight up avoidance tactic. I played The Witcher 3 obsessively, and it wasn't until I finished it that I realised it was because I was really down and that I was just running from what was bothering me. But the way I've kind of always thought about it is that when you're playing a game, you've got a sense of agency, but games are designed for you to win and for you to complete them. You know, it's not like the old days where, you know, Pac-Man was incredibly hard or you couldn't get past a certain level on, you know, X, Y, or Z. Games now, they are designed for you to progress and for you to see the end and see all of this work. So that kind of means that with a sense of agency that you have, you're always doing something and you're always doing something productive and moving forward. And I think it's nice to give people that feeling when they may not necessarily have it in their own personal life. So I think there is, at least in my opinion, I'm sure that there is a therapeutic application there. I mean, as you say, there's so much anecdotal evidence of people using games to make them feel a bit more worthwhile, especially games like Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing, which are lovely quotidian experiences where you just go around doing lots of very small tasks that kind of in this sort of ersatz way build up into improving a whole community, you know, and you can pull back and be like, look at this entire place that I've improved just by pottering around and sort of being lost in my own thoughts. I played a lot of Animal Crossing. I think the project is a fantastic idea simply because of the expertise being put behind it. It's a great thing to have, you know, a web series talking about mental health that actually knows its onions, you know, and where you can trust the voices behind it, and you know that it's going to be balanced and fair, and that it's basically, you know, it's effectively like hearing from or talking to a medical professional, but it's something that people can consume at their own pace, and it's about something they enjoy, and I think it's just a brilliant idea, basically.